3 days before I was supposed to marry the man I believed was my forever, my entire world shattered with a single turn of a doorknob, I stood frozen in the doorway of our new house as I saw my younger sister wrapped in my fiancé embrace. And, in that heartbreaking moment, I realized she had not only stolen another dream from me but had spent our entire lives taking everything I ever loved. My name is Evelyn Carter, and at 34 years old I believed I had finally escaped the shadow that had followed me since childhood. I worked as a financial investigator in Seattle, built a successful career through years of determination, and thought I had found peace with Daniel, the kind and confident man who promised every single day that he would never let anyone come between us. Growing up, my sister Madison never wanted something because she needed it. She wanted it simply because it belonged to me. And somehow our parents always found a reason to excuse her behavior. While asking me to be the understanding older sister, she borrowed my favorite clothes without asking, ruined my biggest celebrations by making everything about herself, dated boys who had shown interest in me first, and smiled sweetly every time she walked away with another piece of my happiness. When Daniel proposed beside a quiet lake surrounded by golden autumn leaves, I truly believed my painful past had finally ended because he looked into my eyes and promised that our future would be built on honesty, loyalty, and unconditional love. My parents hugged him like the son they never had. My friends celebrated for weeks, and even Madison smiled as she congratulated us, although there was something cold hiding behind her cheerful expression that I could never fully explain. 3 days before our wedding, I left work early to surprise Daniel with dinner because he had told me he would spend the afternoon arranging furniture in our new home before we officially moved in together. As I quietly unlocked the front door, I heard laughter coming from upstairs that did not sound innocent, and with every step toward our bedroom my heartbeat grew louder until I opened the door and discovered the betrayal that changed my life forever. I pushed the bedroom door open expecting to surprise the man I loved, but instead I found Daniel and Madison standing only inches apart, their guilty expressions telling me everything before either of them spoke a single word. The dinner I had carefully prepared slipped from my hands, crashing onto the hardwood floor, yet the sound barely registered because the only thing I could hear was my own heart breaking into pieces that could never be put back together. Daniel stumbled over his words, insisting it was not what it looked like, while Madison crossed her arms with a smug smile that made the betrayal hurt even more than the affair itself. She calmly admitted they had been seeing each other for months, then looked me straight in the eyes and said that Daniel had chosen her because she was simply more exciting, leaving me standing there in complete disbelief. Every painful memory from our childhood came rushing back as I realized this was never just about Daniel, because Madison had always treated my happiness like a prize she needed to steal to prove she had won some invisible competition. I wanted to scream, cry, and demand answers, but something inside me suddenly became frighteningly calm. And in that silent moment I decided they would never see me fall apart. I quietly picked up my purse, looked at both of them one final time, and walked out of the house without saying another word, leaving them confused by my unexpected silence. During the drive home, tears streamed down my face, but beneath the heartbreak another feeling slowly began to grow, because for the first time in my life I realized that revenge did not have to come from anger, it could come from patience. That night I canceled nothing, told no one what had happened, and answered every message from Daniel with polite, reassuring replies that convinced him I was willing to forgive everything. Neither he nor Madison had any idea that while they believed they had destroyed my future, I was quietly putting together the final surprise that would change all of our lives forever. I spent the next morning pretending my life was perfectly normal while secretly preparing for the biggest decision I had ever made, because I refused to let the people who betrayed me control the ending of my story. Every phone call from Daniel was filled with fake apologies and carefully rehearsed excuses, yet I answered with kindness so convincing that he believed I was slowly accepting his lies, instead of uncovering every secret he had desperately tried to hide. As a financial investigator, I had learned that people almost always leave behind evidence when they think nobody is paying attention, and Daniel was no exception. I quietly reviewed documents connected to our wedding expenses, our shared plans, and even business records he had once asked me to organize, and what I discovered was far worse than simple cheating, because he had been drowning in debt while secretly planning to use my savings to rescue himself after the wedding. The deeper I looked, the clearer everything became, and I realized Madison had not stolen the perfect man because the perfect man had never existed in the first place. Daniel had been charming, generous, and affectionate only when someone was watching, but behind closed doors he manipulated people, borrowed money he could not repay, and lied so naturally that even those closest to him never questioned a single word. Instead of exposing them immediately, I quietly called every wedding vendor and asked them to make one small change that nobody except me knew about, carefully explaining that it was part of a surprise for the guests. Every arrangement continued exactly as planned. The venue remained booked, invitations stayed unchanged, and both Daniel and Madison relaxed because they believed I was too heartbroken to fight back. Late that evening, I stood alone in front of my bedroom mirror, staring at the wedding dress hanging beside the window, and for the first time since discovering the betrayal, I smiled without forcing it. My heart still ached, but the pain had transformed into determination, because in just 3 days everyone who believed I was the victim would witness a truth so unforgettable that neither Daniel nor Madison would ever recover from the humiliation they had chosen for themselves. The morning of the wedding arrived with bright sunshine and smiling faces, making everything appear perfect on the surface, while only I knew that the celebration everyone expected would become something completely different. Friends and relatives filled the beautiful venue with laughter. Daniel greeted guests with fake confidence, and Madison quietly slipped through the crowd wearing an elegant dress, convinced she had already won the greatest victory of her life. When the ceremony was about to begin, I walked down the aisle wearing my wedding gown with complete confidence, and every eye in the room followed me as soft music echoed through the hall. Daniel smiled as though nothing had happened, believing I had forgiven him, but he had no idea that every step I took toward him brought him closer to the moment that would expose every lie he had carefully hidden. Instead of taking my place beside him, I turned toward the large screen that had been prepared for our wedding slideshow and nodded to the event coordinator. Exactly as we had secretly planned days earlier, the romantic photos everyone expected suddenly disappeared, replaced by phone messages, financial records, hotel reservations, and security footage that revealed Daniel's secret relationship with Madison, along with proof that he intended to marry me only to gain access to my money. The room fell completely silent before shocked voices erupted from every corner as guests stared at the screen in disbelief, unable to believe the people standing before them had carried such a massive deception. My parents burst into tears. Daniel desperately tried to stop the presentation, and Madison screamed that I had humiliated her on purpose, but nobody listened because the evidence spoke louder than any excuse they could invent. I looked directly at Daniel and Madison with a calm smile that surprised even me, then quietly thanked them for teaching me the most valuable lesson of my life before removing my engagement ring and placing it in Daniel's hand. As I turned away from the altar, I realized I was no longer walking away from my future, because for the first time in years I was finally walking toward a life where nobody could ever steal my happiness again. Daniel tried to run after me, but several guests blocked his path as angry voices filled the reception hall and demanded answers he could no longer avoid. Madison kept insisting that I had planned everything to ruin her life, yet nobody felt sympathy for either of them because they had watched the truth unfold with their own eyes, and they understood that betrayal always carries a price. Within days, the story spread through our community, and the people who once admired Daniel discovered the kind of man he had been hiding behind his charming smile for years. His business partners ended their relationships with him after learning about his dishonesty, while Madison found herself completely alone because even the friends who had always defended her finally realized she had spent her life destroying the happiness of the people who loved her most. As for me, I canceled the honeymoon and used the money for something I had postponed for years, a fresh start in a beautiful coastal town where nobody knew my painful past or expected me to live in anyone's shadow. For the first time in my life, every decision belonged only to me, and each new sunrise reminded me that losing to dishonest people was never a tragedy, because it made room for honest people who truly deserved a place in my future. Several months later, I received one final message from Daniel, asking for another chance and claiming he had made the biggest mistake of his life, but I quietly deleted it without replying because some doors are meant to stay closed forever. That moment showed me how much I had changed, since the woman who once feared being alone had become someone who valued her peace more than empty promises, and I knew no apology could erase what they had chosen to do. Looking back now, I no longer remember that wedding as the day my life fell apart, because it became the day I finally broke free from years of manipulation, heartbreak, and betrayal that had followed me since childhood. If my story has taught you anything, let it be this: never chase People who choose to betray your trust because your greatest revenge is building a life so peaceful and successful that they can only watch from a distance and regret what they lost. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.